Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I will be doing my second of two awards videos for the 2022 season. Today I'm going to be doing the big individual awards that I hand out. Monday I did the Roll Stars video. If you did not see that, link to it in the description as well as in the cards, and at the end of this video I will have a link to that as well. Today I have 6 awards that I'm going to be handing out. 3 of them are your main 3 awards that the Overwatch League gives out: MVP, Coach of the Year, and Rookie of the Year. Those will be at the end of the video, but to start, I have 3 other awards that I wanted to give out this year. And they are Best New Home, which goes to a player who was in the league last season and is on a new team this season, who I think had the best season on a new team. There's Best Midseason Addition, which is a player who was either a free agent at the start of the season, or got traded to a new team during the season and had a really big impact on their team after they joined. And Comeback Player of the Year, which goes to a player who had a down season a year ago, whether that be they were they dropped down into contenders or they just weren't performing very well, whatever it is, and had a bounce back year this year. And then, of course, like I said, we'll get into our other 3 major awards that the Overwatch League has. I have my own results for those, so that's all there is for that. So, without further ado, let's jump in and let's get started with the first award in this video, which is the Best New Home Award. This one is a really interesting one, I think. This is the first time I'm doing this one. I didn't do this one in years past, but I kind of liked it as an award. I did it in one of my predictions for the year of kind of who I thought would have the best year as a player on a new team. So I figured I would do it as an award type of thing to kind of honor the fact that some of these players get put into new situations and it's a really big thing for them. There's some similarities to Best Midseason Edition in this way, or not Best Midseason Edition. Comeback Player of the Year, because if they're on a new team they weren't on last year, maybe they had a bad year, go to a new team, have a really good year. Stuff like that can happen, but to me, this is an award mainly to highlight a player who had a really good year, even in a new home. They kind of proved that they are still a really good player or had a bounce back year by going into a new system. So my 5 nominees for this award are Smurf of the Seoul Dynasty, of course, formerly of the San Francisco Shock; Edison of the Dallas Fuel, formerly of the Atlanta Reign; Funny Astro of the Los Angeles Gladiators, formerly of the Philadelphia Fusion; Lastro of the Houston Outlaws, formerly of the Toronto Defiant; and Twilight of the Toronto Defiant, formerly of the San Francisco Shock. I think all 5 of these, really great year on new teams, but to me, there's a clear number 1 pick for this award, and it is Smurf from the Seoul Dynasty. He was my preseason pick for who I thought would be the player in the best new home, or the best player in a new home, and I think Smurf was far and away the best player on a new home this year. Edison, Funny Astro, Lastro, Twilight had great years, but none of them were MVP caliber candidates like Smurf was. It was a really incredible year from him, and he definitely shone very brightly on this Dynasty roster, led them to the best record in the APAC region, the number 1 seed in the APAC region, led them to, of course, the Kickoff Class Championship, and maybe even possibly a playoff championship here, Grand Finals win. We'll see how it goes for them, but definitely huge year from Smurf. Really good year on a new team with the Seoul Dynasty, and he is the, in my opinion, no-brainer choice for the Best New Home Award. Moving on to the Best Mid-Season Addition. First one is King for the Vancouver Titans. Next is Happy, who joined the LA Gladiators from the Washington Justice in a trade during the season. Iris, who was traded from the Houston Outlaws to the Seoul Dynasty; RuPaul for the Florida Mayhem; and Xerneas for the Guangzhou Charge. All 5 of these players also had a really good year. Some of them a little more surprising than others. Obviously, someone like King, who came out of contenders, kind of came out of nowhere. Happy had a pretty good year with Washington, goes to the Gladiators and continues to perform very well. Iris and Creative, that trade between Seoul and Houston, very good. For both of those sides, I think Iris has been a little bit more impactful, though. RuPaul to the Florida Mayhem, kind of a really interesting signing early in the year that really did kind of do a lot. And Xerneas goes to the Guangzhou Charge and is a big part of their resurgence in the second half of the year. But to me, there is a pretty obvious winner in this one as well, and it is Xerneas of the Guangzhou Charge. That Guangzhou Charge roster went from being a one-win team in the first half of the season to being one of the best teams in the second half of the year in terms of overall record. I believe they went 8-4 in the second half of the year, which is tied with teams like the Shock and the Gladiators for best record in that second half of the season, behind only the likes of the Shanghai Dragons, the Dallas Fuel, and the Seoul Dynasty. So it was a really good second half of the year for the Guangzhou Charge. I think Xerneas was a big part of that. Jimmy was another big part of that, but I think Xerneas was just better than Jimmy. I thought he had a much higher impact as a player. I thought he was really consistently good. Very, very close. You could have really given it to either of them. You really could have given it to basically that entire new lineup for that team. But to me, Xerneas was the key, was the better of the two, and really was the player I wanted to highlight for this one. So he is my winner for best midseason addition. Comeback player of the year. This, of course, goes to a player that had a down year a year ago. Really good candidates for this one. We have Edison of the Dallas Fuel, Who Are You of the Shanghai Dragons, Krillin of the Washington Justice, Hadi of the London Spitfire, and Dia of the Los Angeles Valiant. All five of these players had a very, very, very unique year this year. Who Are You was kind of just a bench warmer last year, but this year for Shanghai, he was one of the most important pieces to their success this year in both the Kickoff Clash and the Summer Showdown. Edison sat on the bench with the Atlanta Reign last year, played behind Pelican and Kai for most of the season. He got playtime occasionally, but wasn't incredible. Krillin really comes in this year and really kind of showed why he was signed by the Spitfire back in 2019. 2020 he was kind of middling. This year he had a very respectable year. Hadi went from arguably the worst main tank in the league last year to being a really good main tank this year. And Dia, of course, his story. He's been in and out of the Overwatch League now. He was a 2018 member of the Shanghai Dragons, is on that team for a little bit, goes back down to Contenders, and then comes back this year, and I think had a really, really good year. But all of these candidates are deserving of this award, but only one can get it, and I am giving it to Hadi of the London Spitfire. And the reason why I'm giving it to Hadi is really because you have to think about what Hadi did this season. He was arguably the worst main tank in the league last year, or at least one of the worst main tanks in the league last year. His team won one game the entire season, and it was their final game of the year. And he comes back this year to the same Spitfire roster, one that I don't think a lot of people were super adamant would be very, very good this year. And Hadi had a great year. He is a role star for the 2022 season. He had an incredible season on the Spitfire. And so, to me, he is the obvious one. He is the clear, obvious player on this list who has genuine accolades that you can point to and went from one of the worst players in the league at his role to one of the best in the league at his role in just one season. It's an incredible story. It's an incredible turnaround for Hadi. So to me, no brainer that he is the comeback player of the year. He deserves all the praise he's getting this year. I think he had a really fantastic year, and I think you have to give a ton of credit to Hadi for the success of the Spitfire this year, and I think he absolutely deserves comeback player of the year. Now let's move on to some of those juicy, big awards the Overwatch League gives out, starting with Coach of the Year. 5 nominees, of course. I have Christopher of the London Spitfire, Face of the Los Angeles Gladiators, Toby of the Seoul Dynasty, Gunba of the Florida Mayhem, and Rush of the Dallas Fuel. Rush won this award last year, so him being on this list, no big surprise. Moon and Krusty not being on this list may be a surprise to some of you. I don't necessarily think this was their best year in terms of coaching. They're legendary coaches. You kind of expect a lot from them. I struggled to give them Coach of the Year in years that I don't think they had their best work, so I didn't put them on this list. But Christopher comes in, obviously, to the Spitfire this year and completely helps turn that team around. Face on the Gladiators really solidified that team from a solid, really good team last year to arguably one of the top 3 teams of the 2022 season. Toby brings the first ever title win in any capacity for the Seoul Dynasty. this season. And Gunba has done a fantastic job with a Mayhem roster that not a lot of people expected to have a ton of success. They've been a pretty solid roster, and a lot of that comes down to Gunba's coaching. So really good candidates this year for Coach of the Year, but I am giving the award to the one who I think is probably the least surprising player, or not player, coach on this list. The person who I think will probably end up winning the award anyway, and that is Christopher of the London Spitfire. This team last year was the worst team for the majority of the Overwatch League season, or at least one of the worst teams. You know, one-win team, like I was talking about with RotY. And they made some changes this year, of course, to their players, of course. They held on to RotY, they held on to Sparker and Shax. They kept some of the pieces of this roster, but the big change they made was to their coaching staff, bringing in Christopher. And Christopher has done a fantastic job coaching this team. It's really hard to give awards like this. We don't really get a lot of insight from coaches in the Overwatch League, but everything we hear about Christopher is that he's done a fantastic job. I'm recording this with some playoff games behind us, so I have a little bit more stuff I can comment on there, but we did see Landon talking about how Christopher at the beginning of the season really told them we have to figure out what we're good at, and if we need to understand that we're not maybe as mechanically good as some of these other teams, but if we can become the best at one thing, like communication or something like that, we can beat anybody we play. And I think that's been a really, really big thing for the Spitfire this season. So to me, Christopher absolutely is Coach of the Year. He's had the best season, in my opinion, of all of the coaches in the league, and I think that he is the most deserving for this award this season. Next is Rookie of the Year. Another big award. This year had a lot of great rookies. There was a pretty clear-cut favorite going into the season, so it's kind of interesting to kind of see where this season has gone in terms of the rookie talent and who people are going to put. I think most of us have a pretty good idea who's going to win it, but we'll see what happens. But the question is, did I give that person the award, and did I even nominate them for the award? The nominees for Rookie of the Year are Proper, of course, of the San Francisco Shock, Reiner of the LA Gladiators, Chio of the Dallas Fuel, Zest of the Philadelphia Fusion, and Merritt of the Houston Outlaws. All really, really good players this season. Proper, one of the top DPS players of the season. Same with Merritt and Zest. All three of them really great high-level DPS talent this season. Some more surprising than others, but really good years from them. Reiner on the tank role, big part of the Gladiator success this season. And Chio, arguably the top main support of the season, not even just among rookies, in general, arguably the top main support of the season. So it's a lot of really good rookies, but to me, there really is a clear-cut standout on this rookie lineup, and of course, everyone knows that I'm going to give this award to Proper. I have not been the biggest Proper fan this season. I think there's a lot of reasons why you could be critical of the Shock and the way that they have played this season with Proper. But there is one thing that is very, very clear. Proper is an elite player who has been a very, very big part of this team's success this year. They would not be nearly as good as they are without Proper. He has been an incredible piece that has done a lot to actually elevate this team to be one of the best teams in the Western region and in the league as a whole. And I think that you have to give a ton of credit to Proper. He has been pretty much everything that people thought he would be. He had a really, 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 really big kind of fanfare and hype around him coming into the season. And in a lot of ways, a lot of players never really hit that. You think about Decay back in 2019. He had a fine year, but he definitely wasn't as good as people thought he might be. Mag a year ago, everyone thought he was going to be the best rookie of the season, and he did not really live up to that hype. Sparkle in 2020 kind of had that benefit of not having to play right away, and when he did get to play, it was a big Genji meta, so he came in and looked really, really good. So usually there's that one rookie that comes in every season that everybody thinks is going to be the best rookie, that it's definitively this guy's going to be the best. And that was Proper going into this year. He had a ton of pressure going in, and he met all of it. Definitely the best rookie of the season. I think there's no doubt about that. And he is my Rookie of the Year, and I would say probably will also win the Overwatch League Rookie of the Year award. Finally, we move on to the big award of this season, the MVP. There are a ton of really good MVP candidates this year. To me, this was a really tough year to pick, much like I think 2020 was the other year for me that I thought was really, really difficult to pick. I thought 2018, 2019, 2021, it was pretty clear who the MVP was. This year, to me, there are a ton of really good candidates, and you could give it to pretty much anybody. I have flip-flopped a lot, bouncing between who I think should get the award and who shouldn't get the award. I think you could argue any of the five that I'm about to throw out as MVP, but to me, I had to pick one, and so that is what I have done. So let's talk about the five people that I am nominating for MVP for this one. Proper from the San Francisco Shock is one of my MVP candidates. Of course he is. He's one of the front runners. He's going to be a huge, huge name for the Overwatch League for years to come. He's been incredible this year. Absolutely one of the MVP candidates. Hanbin of the Dallas Fuel, an incredible year from him this year. He has been one of the best parts of this team. He has been one of the most important pieces of this Dallas Fuel roster this season. The majority of their success on the back of Hanbin. He's incredible, and I think that you have to give him a ton of credit for the success of the Dallas Fuel this year. Lip of the Shanghai Dragons. I think one of the ones who people may have slept on a bit this year. Obviously, he's been an MVP candidate, a perennial MVP candidate now, really since 2020. I don't think he was nominated back then, but he should have been. He had a very, very good year back then, and he's been a really good player forever. I think he was the best part of the Shanghai Dragons this season, consistently dominating and performing at a high level, never really slowed down. Even when the rest of the team around him was struggling a bit, Lip really was very, very good. There's a reason why they were a top 5 team in the league, and a lot of that was because Lip was really bringing the heat every single week. Kevster of the LA Gladiators is my next MVP candidate. Really, really, really close competition in the West this season on some of those top-level DPS picks. Kevster, Proper, the best 2 DPS players in the West this season. Statistically, obviously Kevster holding his own against Proper, as well as 2 tournament titles this season. It's been a very big season from Kevster. He has been incredible this year, and I think you have to give a ton of love to Kevster for what he's done this season. And finally, my 5th and final MVP candidate is Smurf of the Seoul Dynasty. Really big year from him. The only tank on the Seoul Dynasty roster. He was expected to play things like Zarya and D.Va that he has not historically played, and he's looked really good on those. He still looked good playing the Winston, of course, Sigma whenever he had to play it, Doomfist at the beginning of the year, stuff like that. Smurfs looked good on all of it. I think there were some questions about how good he would look going into this season, but he has looked incredible as always. And so this is my field of 5 for MVP. Really, really, really good picks. I have flip-flopped. I have gone back and forth between a bunch of players on this list so far, but I am happy with where I solidified, and I'm very happy with my selection for MVP this year. My MVP for the 2022 season of the Overwatch League is Smurf of the Seoul Dynasty. I think Smurf's had an incredible year. Smurf heads, rise up. I think you would look at what Smurf has done this year. The success he's brought to this Dynasty roster has been very, very important. And I think one of the things for me that is very, very key to why I think Smurf deserves MVP is because to perform really well on the tank role this year is a much bigger jump for something like DPS. As great of years as Kevster and Proper and Lip have had, the tank role fundamentally changed this season. The tank role is very different than what it was a year ago. Smurf could get away a year ago being a Winston specialist, occasionally having to play stuff like Reinhardt or Wrecking Ball. But, he had Choyobin at his side to play the D.Va, to play the Zarya, to play whatever off-tank you needed. Now Smurf has to play all of it. He has to be able to play Junker Queen, he has to be able to play Winston, he has to be able to play Zarya, D.Va, Sigma, Rein, whatever it is. It's a really big jump for that tank role. And the Seoul Dynasty only had Smurf. So not only did Smurf have to step up in a big way to cover, the kind of big hole left by the departure of Gesture from the Seoul Dynasty, he didn't have another person to tank with, A lot of other teams in the Eastern region in particular had multiple tank players, right? The Shanghai Dragons had 2, the Philadelphia Fusion had 2, the Hangzhou Spark had 2, but it was just Smurf for the Seoul Dynasty. And he not only filled in that spot very, very well and was able to kind of play everything. But he was able to play everything at an elite high level. And I think you just have to give him a ton of credit for being able to do that. Yes, he doesn't have the tournament success as someone like Kevster who won 2 different tournaments, and he maybe doesn't have the overall record of a player like Proper, and the tournament success of someone like Hanbin. But what Smurf was able to do for the Seoul Dynasty this year as the only tank player on a team that historically has not really been all of that, great. They'd never won anything before. Smurf led this team to their first ever title. Yes, he did it alongside Profit, but as the season progressed, it became clear that Smurf was the key to success for this team. He was the reason why this team was able to get wins, and so for me, Smurf is the MVP for the 2022 season. There's a lot of great candidates. You really could make arguments for anyone that I have on this list, and even some of the ones who didn't make it onto this top 5 for me, but that for me is who I pick is Smurf. I just think he had a great year. I flip-flopped a lot. It really was like down to the wire of who I was going to pick, but I ultimately settled on Smurf just because I thought he had a really good year, and I think that he deserves this award a lot. I would love to hear from you all who you have as your MVPs. I'm sure everyone has wildly different answers. To me, there is no wrong answer in terms of like the MVP candidates this year. There are a ton of great candidates. If Proper wins, I wouldn't be upset. If Hanbin wins, I wouldn't be upset. If Kevster wins, I wouldn't be upset. If Lip wins, I wouldn't be upset. Obviously, if Smurf wins, I wouldn't be upset. There is no one right answer. I want everyone to understand that. So if you agree with me, let me know why you also think Smurf is MVP. If you disagree with me, let me know why whoever you picked as MVP you think is MVP. And any of the other awards, whether it be one of the big 3 awards or one of my 3 awards. If you agree with my candidates, if there's someone else you wish I had nominated, whatever it is, let me know in the comments down below. But that is it for today. That is it for my awards. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing, as it does help the channel out a bunch. That is all from me. Thank you all once again. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.